Hi everyone, I've got some cuteness for you today. I'm going to paint this little duckling in watercolour. We lived in Sydney for a few years recently, and we only had one car there, and Don would take the car to work. So whenever I sold one of my paintings, I'd have to walk to the post office to mail it. And my walk took me through a park with a big water feature. One day on one of my walks, one of the ducks there had all these ducklings with it. So of course I had to rush back to the apartment and grab the camera. They were so cute. Mother duck had so many of them to look after. There were little bundles of yellow fluffy cuteness waddling everywhere. So let me show you how I painted one of them in watercolour. I've got my reference photo on my iPad and I'm ready to go. I'll be painting on Arches hot pressed watercolour paper for this painting. So I'm going to use my Vinci oval pointed wash brush just to paint some water onto the back of the duckling. So I want to fill in most of the back up to the wing with water. So this is the area here that I've wet. So while that paper's wet, I'm going to use my mop brush just to paint some Naples yellow onto the back of the duck. So I just paint this onto the damp paper. So now I've got some of the Aureolin on my brush and I'm just going to brighten up some of the Naples yellow area with that. So I'm just painting onto the damp Naples yellow paint. So I've left some white paper showing there, and now I'm going to start painting the front of the duck. So I just put some water where I want the paint to go. I want a nice even coverage, I don't want any puddles anywhere. And then I'm going to mix up some grey with some burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And I'll just paint this onto the damp paper at the front of the duckling. This area is in shadow, so I'll make these feathers a bit darker than the rest of the feathers. And I'm just going to put some of the grey here behind the leg on this little area. So I'm going to leave that to dry and then I'm going to go and start working on the head. So I've painted the head in Naples yellow, it's dried, and now I've re-wet the top half of it with water. Now because the paper's wet, you don't want your brush to be too wet, so just take off the excess moisture on a cloth before you pick up your watery paint. Otherwise you end up with water everywhere. So it's damp paper and watery paint here. But before I picked up the yellow, I just dabbed the excess moisture out of my brush. So I've gone all the way around the back of the head with that brighter yellow, and now I'm just painting some French ochre behind the eye, just on the dry paper. And all of the paints and brushes that I'm using are listed in the description below the video. Okay, so here I'm painting on dry paper. I'm using green gold, and I'm just starting to add a bit of detail to the front of the head. So I'm just doing little flicks with my brush. I'm following the direction of the feathers, and I'm not making those flicks too long, so they're only little short flicks. I also bring it down beside the beak and underneath the eye as well. So I'm going to jump ahead now and paint the eye in. And then when that's done, I come down underneath the neck and I just start to bring the neckline in with some of the green gold. So I'm painting on damp paper here. So the feathers here on the reference photo are actually in shadow, so they're just a bit darker than the rest of the feathers. So just little flicks again. I've also painted some French ochre up there beside the head. So now I've got the grey that I mixed up earlier with the burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, and I'm just painting a second layer over the top of these feathers at the front of the duckling. Painting on damp paper here. Now I'm dropping in some of the green gold before that paint dries, and that'll just blend with the grey. So I've switched to a smaller brush now. This is a 00 Maestro brush. And I'm just using the grey here just to bring in those jagged edges on the feathers above here. So I just pull them onto the dry paper there. So this is the grey that I've mixed up. I've got a darker grey and a lighter grey with more water in it. So this is just the ultramarine blue with a touch of burnt sienna mixed into it. I'm just using the lighter grey that I've mixed up so it's got more water in it. I'm calling it a grey, but it's more of a blue than a grey. So now I've got some of the green gold and I'm just dropping that onto the damp grey paint just to blend with it. Okay, so now I want to start bringing in some feathers behind the wing. So if I just draw a few jagged edges there, that'll guide me. So then behind the jagged edges, or on the left side of my pencil line here, I just want to wet the paper with some water. So I've just turned my board and then I can wet that paper there in behind those feathers. And then I come in with some Naples yellow. So the water on the paper just keeps those edges soft behind the wing. So moving back down here now, I'm painting on dry paper here with the grey mix, and I'm just trying to bring in some of those little jagged feathers down there as well. So this is just the light grey, which is the ultramarine blue with the burnt sienna. And I'm just painting on dry paper. And that gives me those little fluffy, jagged feathers down there. I've left some of the first grey wash showing. I haven't completely covered that. Now I've got Naples yellow again. And I'm just starting to bring in the tail feathers now. So here I'm painting on dry paper as well. And I've just watered the Naples yellow down a touch because it's an opaque colour and I want to be able to see through it. So I'm going to jump ahead now and get some detail on these feet. I've washed them in transparent orange, and now I'm coming in and I'm darkening them and adding some detail. So what I do is I just wet each toe with water, and then I use a liner brush just to run some of the transparent orange along the bottom of the toe. So here I'm just wetting the toe, and then I run the orange along the bottom of the toe, and it just bleeds up over onto the surface of the toe. Now I've jumped ahead and I've painted the shadow where the duckling is standing, and now I'm just using some opaque white just to add some detail. And I can also use this just to paint a few more of the feathers coming down onto the leg and down onto the shadow as well. Now I'm just running some Windsor Violet along underneath the foot just to darken the shadow there. So I'm painting on damp paper here. So there's my finished duckling. I hope you enjoyed that. The full-length tutorial along with the line drawing and the reference photo is available on Patreon right now. And the link to find out more is listed in the description of this video. Before you go, I want to show you my new paper cupboard. You might have seen my painting room video where I showed you around this room. Well, this corner here where I'm standing was bare because I was waiting for Dom to finish doing up the old architect's plan cupboard that we had. We bought this old cupboard at an auction about 18 years ago, and it's been sitting in our garage ever since, just gathering dust and cobwebs. Dom spent 6 weekends, or maybe more, I've lost count, fixing it up. He took all the rust out of it and he got all the flaking paint off it. He repainted it, he put new handles on it, and he put a new timber top on it. So now it stores all my paper. It's so good. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you soon.